And give me just a moment to pull up the slides for this webinar. Okay. Can you please confirm that you can see the slides?
We see the presenter's view, Anita.
So you see the next slide as well?
Yes.
Okay, give me just a moment to fix that in an instant. Okay. Here we go. They should be all better now. Okay, great.
Perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this communication webinar from the Sunshine Project, leveraging EU space data and services for disaster resilience. On behalf of the Sunshine Consortium, welcome, and we look forward to spending the following hour with you, going over the activities of the Sunshine Project. More specifically, today we will be looking into the Sunshine Project, what it is, its background, its objectives, and the activities. And of course, specifically the Sunshine trainings. We will look into the seminars, the webinars, the bilateral meetings, and the exercises that happen within the scope of the project. And then we'll also have a quick look at the EU EWSS technical assistance that is offered as part of the project. Then we'll go over what happens after the training activities, as well as the upcoming opportunities, training opportunities that you can all sign up for and register. More about that in a moment. And then we will finish up with a Q&A session where you will be able to ask all of your questions to the Sunshine team, me, Anita, Charlie, and Simon. And then we will conclude with the end of the webinar. Some things to consider before we dive into the webinar. First of all, this webinar is being recorded. The recording of the webinar will be made available to you on the Sunshine page of the UCPKN website. So you will be able to find the recording as well as the slides that will be presented today and consult them again if you need to access the links that are presented and use it for your own reference. Then a few housekeeping rules. We kindly ask you to stay muted when you're not speaking so that we can avoid disruptions and background noise during the presentation. And we encourage you to use the raise hand function of the chat during the Q&A session so that you can be called on and ask your question directly to the team. Then we kindly ask you to be respectful and concise when sharing your comments or questions to the Sunshine team. As this webinar takes place on Zoom, you have the option to activate automatically translated captions. You can do so by clicking on live transcript in the menu interface and then select the language of your choice. If you want to use this function, this is how you can do it. Now it's the moment to meet the speakers. My name is Anita Eliseu, and I am a project officer at ENA, the European Emergency Number Association. I am in charge of the training for the Sunshine, the delivery of the training for the Sunshine Project, and I will go over the training activities with you. And here I'd like to hand over to the other two speakers, Charlie and Simon.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Faradji from Telespazio. I'm project manager and coordinating the Sunshine Consortium.
And hello, everyone. I'm Simon from Telespazio 2. I'm working mainly on the EWSS subject, and I am so responsible of the organization of the exercises on the Sunshine project. We'll see after about that. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you as well. I think we are ready to begin. So at this point, I'm handing the floor over to Charlie to give you an introduction to the Sunshine Project.
Yes, thank you, Anita. Indeed, I will do a quick introduction on the project. So, explaining a bit the background and where it's coming from, this initiative. So, you can go to the next slide. Yes. So basically, the Sunshine Project stems from the observation that with climate change and safety threats increasing, hazards and risks are increasing both in frequency and intensity. And this raises two needs. The need to transform civil protection and international cooperation on addressing these issues. And of course, the need to be well prepared to handle the disasters as efficiently as possible before, during, and after a crisis. So from this observation, the European Parliament, you can change the slide, please, Anita. Yes, the European Parliament and the member states came with a request to study how to better understand the EU space services and to go more into detail on what is the potential of EU space services to support specifically national civil protection authorities. On top of that, the EU space program is here. Satellites are at the service of disaster management, and EU is developing and operating different space infrastructure, and we will go in detail and detail what we are talking about here. And all of that has great potential for civil protection community. It is already used today, but maybe not to the maximum of the possible scope. And so we are here to help evolving in this direction. So here we are talking about Earth observation, monitoring, mapping, public warning, of course, governmental communication, etc., etc. So how to make the best use of the space capabilities in terms of crisis? That's the problematic that raised the need to the Sunshine Project. And so the European Commission came with a proposal to build a project and a consortium with these three objectives: to present and demonstrate the EU space services, to help the civil protection community to understand what they can do and how they can use those services and data, and to support the operational integration in national systems and procedure. So this is how we have we hope and we are trying to achieve the fact that we will strengthen the resilience of EU member states. And for that, we propose dedicated trainings to understand how to use these services, simulation exercises. Simon will go into that to transform the knowledge acquired during the training into actual skills, and helping specifically the support and the integration of the upcoming Galileo EWSS service into the national systems. So we'll go a bit into more details on each of these topics that are addressed within the consortium of Sunshine. So we gathered a group of experts in all these fields, so telespatio, but also space, the CNES, Edelweiss Resilience, the University of Strasbourg, CERTIT, the service of CERTIT specifically, FDC, IABG, and INA. And so now let's go into more detail, and I will let Anita start with the description of the different opportunities.
Thank you, Charlie. Indeed, I will be going over the Sunshine training opportunities with you. As you can see from the screen, there are 4 different activities that are done within the Sunshine project. We have the seminars, the webinars, the bilateral meetings, and then the exercises. So we have 4 seminars in total and 5 webinars, 2 of which are communication webinars. This is the second communication webinar, as we'll see in a moment. And then we also have 3 training webinars that are more focused trainings. Then we have the bilateral meetings, that is 1 per member state, so 27 in total, and then 2 simulation exercises that, as was mentioned, are designed to help put the training participants, help the training participants put their learned theory from the seminars into practice by utilizing what they've learned in a simulated exercise. Now, who are all these trainings for? The Sunshine training activities are designed for a variety of actors that are directly tied to the field of public safety, disaster resilience, crisis management, and relevant fields. Specifically, we are looking for operational and strategic actors, such as members of civil protection authorities, emergency services, crisis and disaster management team leads, but also technical emergency teams and the ministries that are responsible for civil protection in each country. Then we are also looking for high-level technical knowledge actors. These can consist of technical experts, training coordinators, technological institutes, national scientific bodies and research organizations, as well as members of the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network. And then, and this is all the more relevant for the bilateral meetings, we also look for political and coordination actors. Those can be policymakers on a national and local level, as well as EU institutions, international and European organizations, NGOs, and other relevant EU coordination bodies. Now, we are going to be looking at the trainings one by one, and we'll start with the seminars. The seminars have a duration of 4 days, and they are our deep dive into the EU space services for crisis management. So 4 days in a seminar, and during those 4 days, you get an in-depth training on EU space components and their applications for crisis management. It is a combination of theoretical presentations covering each component and then practical exercises that help you put that theory into practice once you have acquired it. There will be more information on that in just a minute. The seminars follow a train-the-trainer approach in which the experts that handle the presentations are trying to help you, the participants, learn and take this knowledge and make it your own so that you are then able to relate to your own teams, to your own organizations, and thus help spread the accessibility and utilization of the EU space services and data. This approach ensures the accuracy, relevance, and replicability of the Sunshine trainings. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's practical demonstrations on the use of EU space data and services in which you're able to see for yourself how they work, how to access them, and how their platforms look like when you need to use them. Here you can have a look at the agenda of the seminars covering the 4 days. When we see it broken down like this, it's 1 half day and 2 full days and then another half day. The blue blocks that you see on the calendar are the theory and guided trainings, so the more theoretical presentations of the EU space components. And then the pink ones are the practice sessions, the exercises and workshops that you will take part in to test your knowledge on the EU space components and improve the skills you have acquired. Just to name a few, and we will look at them in more detail in just a moment, there's a tabletop exercise that guides you through the synergies of Copernicus emergency management system and the emergency warning satellite service, Galileo emergency warning satellite service, and then a rotating workshop when you can get to access the platforms that are displayed during the training, demonstrated during the training, sorry. So, what will you learn during these seminars? Over those 4 days that the seminars last for, you are going to learn everything there is to know about the EU space program. And to be more specific, there's first training on the ECHO online platforms, such as the Emergency Rescue Coordination Center portal, the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network, and Aristotle. Then there is a session on space situational awareness, during which you learn what are the main threats that come from space and how to best identify them and how to best address them. The session shows you how SSA and its subsystems can help the relevant authorities monitor these threats, and also it demonstrates some concrete examples of the use of space situational awareness for civil protection. Next, and that's a big block of knowledge right there, is training on Copernicus Emergency Management Service. Copernicus EMS covers a very wide range of applications, data, and services that are available through the EU space program that also cover a wide range, an equally wide range of disasters and crisis situations that our target audience is often required to address and manage. To name a few, during those sessions, you learn about the European Drought Observatory, the Global Human Settlement Layer, the European Forest Fire Information System, and the European Flood Awareness System for wildfires and floods, respectively. And then two different rapid mapping services, the Rapid Mapping Service and the Risk and Recovery Service for preparedness. Then we move on to Galileo. The Galileo services that are covered in this training, in the seminars, is the Galileo Emergency Warning Satellite Service, Galileo EWSS, where you learn about its concepts and capabilities, but also how to access and use Galileo EWSS. In addition to that, there is a detailed introduction and presentation of other services that support civil protection, such as the High Accuracy Service, the Open Service Navigation Message Authentication, the Public Regulated Service, and Search and Rescue Service that is offered through Galileo. Lastly, the seminars also cover presentations on the European satellite communication systems. So, namely GOVSATCOM, government satellite communications, and how to access it, but also a look at the future with IRIS², an upcoming service. So that is a lot of knowledge that is covered throughout those 4 days. How exactly is it taught? The approach of the Sunshine seminars is crisis management oriented. We utilize 3 reference disasters: the wildfires in Portugal in 2024, the floods in Central and Eastern Europe, also in 2024, and then the 3rd reference disaster is the Chernobyl nuclear incident in 1986. The topics during the training are presented in the following crisis phases: before the crisis, during the crisis, and after the crisis. So you get the whole full approach from start to finish of a disaster, and you can learn through this what is the best time for each of the component, how is each component best applied in its situation. And then putting theory into practice. There's 3 practical exercises in the Sunshine seminars. First is the tabletop exercise when CEMS meets EWSS. In this exercise, you'll use the theory you've learned to practice with advanced concepts of Galileo EWSS and Copernicus EMS. This is a collaborative exercise where you'll work with fellow participants to manage a simulated disaster scenario. Then we have the rotating workshop, Be a Satellite is what we've called it. This is your opportunity during the training to test and see the different tools and systems that have been presented during the seminar. You'll jump from one component onto the next, familiarizing yourself with the different systems, the platforms, and their uses. And lastly, we have the pedagogical evaluation. This is the participants' time to shine and show the Sunshine team what they've learned and how well they've understood it. For this exercise, you will also work together with your fellow participants for a comprehensive presentation into the EU space component that you have been assigned. Now, let's look at each practical exercise one by one in a little bit more detail. Starting with a tabletop exercise, when Copernicus EMS meets EWSS. So this is a role-play session simulating an impending disaster based on the reference disasters that we are using throughout the training, specifically the Central Eastern Europe floods of 2024. This exercise involves two countries, Slovakia and Hungary, and in its execution, the participants are split in three teams: Team Slovakia, Team Hungary, and also Team ERCC. And of course, you have Team Sunshine that will be there to support you all throughout the exercise, plus Sunny, our little mascot right there. During this exercise, the tabletop exercise, you will discover the possible synergies between Copernicus EMS and Galileo EWSS. The exercise aims to help you practice your understanding of CMS and EWSS based on the theory that you've learned during their respective presentation. And lastly, it aims to test your knowledge in a simulated exercise using real data and EU space services. Second, we have the rotating workshop, Be a Satellite. Here, you will group up with your fellow participants and get familiar with the platforms as they have been presented in the theoretical presentations. In this exercise, in these workshops, there's 5 interactive workshops that you can take part in. First, EWSS, one workshop to discover the alert platform, and then another one to practice with the TUTs for alert notification. Then we have the OSNMA workshop for a demonstration of the OSNMA capacity. And then EFIS and EFAS, so forest fire and flood, respectively, discover the platform, learn how it is used, how to access it, and how you can implement it into your operations. Lastly, we have the pedagogical evaluation. So after all of the presentations, after all the knowledge that you have received, how well have you understood it? Don't worry though, this is not a very strict evaluation. Here you'll work with groups, with your fellow participants, and together you will put what you've learned into a little presentation for the Sunshine team. Essentially, your presentation will cover the basics of the EU space component that you have been assigned. How does it work? What does it do? When does it activate and by who? How does it apply to your operations? Here you are free to use everything that you've learned during the theoretical presentations for your own work. Then you present your component to the audience, the Sunshine team, and your fellow participants, and you receive feedback, not a grade. So that's all there is to know about the Sunshine seminars. You will have more information on how to participate in the next slides, actually towards the end. So now we're going to move on to the next training, which is the webinars. The webinars are Sunshine's online sessions for focused learning on the EU space services, but also on the Sunshine training opportunities. As was mentioned earlier, there's 2 types of Sunshine webinars, communication and training. Communication webinars are sessions to boost project visibility and also promote the training opportunities that are available to you. Today, you are actually connected to Sunshine's 2nd communication webinar, and in fact, the last. But then we also have the 3 training webinars. These are online sessions that are focused and that include focused and targeted learning on specific EU space components. The presentations here are done by experts of the Sunshine Consortium, similarly to the seminars, and they include detailed sessions on the purpose, the functions, the use, and the real-world applications of EU space assets. So far, we have had one training webinar that's been successfully executed back in January, the 20th of January. And there we covered the European Drought Observatory, the Global Human Settlement Layer, Galileo EWSS, and OSNMA. The next training webinar is taking place on the 4th of June, Thursday, 4th of June. And here we will cover Copernicus EMS for floods and fires. So we'll cover EFAS and EFIS, the European Flood Awareness System and European Forest Fire Information System, as well as rapid mapping and risk and recovery mapping. If you want to register for this webinar, the one on the 4th of June for floods and forest fires, you can scan the QR code that's presented to you here and follow the steps on the registration page to complete your registration. Just a reminder that these slides will be made available to you at the end of the webinar, so you'll be able to access the QR code again and register as well. Then the third webinar is scheduled for the 10th of September, and the agenda will be communicated soon. So keep an eye out on the UCPKN page, on the UCPKN website and the Sunshine page. So that covers the webinars, and I think we're ready to move on to the bilateral meetings. These are tailored discussions with each EU member state. To explain a little bit more what that means, the bilateral meetings are meetings between the Sunshine team, the Sunshine team, and each EU member state to discuss national needs and challenges with regards to the EU space program. These meetings build on the knowledge gained during the seminars and webinars, so the presentations that are shown, the training on the EU space components. What's really important for these meetings is the contact points that are made during the seminars. Those contact points will help us connect with the target audience for the bilateral meetings. The target audience includes representatives from ministries or agencies for civil protection in each country, national policymakers, operational leaders from civil protection, but also technical experts and/or advisors that are involved in national disaster management plans. So together, the Sunshine team and the target audience for the bilaterals, each group from each country, we can tailor the discussion to each national need, each challenge that is, and find solutions to the challenges and recommendations to the challenges that are faced. If you would like to book a slot for the bilateral meetings, there is an easy process to do it. First of all, we ask you to coordinate the main actors of your country, so the target audience that we described in the previous slide. Then you can scan the QR code below that's going to take you to a calendar where you're able to book the date, your preferred date for the meeting. Once your date is confirmed, you are able to prepare your questions for your conversation with the Sunshine team. And then when the date of your booking of your meeting arrives, you start the discussion with the Sunshine experts. What's important here is the first step, the coordination with the main actors of your country. So they ask you to take care of that before you book your slot for the meeting. And as always, you will have access to this link on the QR code at the end of the webinar when the slides become available. Here, we're nearing the end of the training activities overview. So here is the calendar for the upcoming training activities for Sunshine. With regards to the seminars, our next seminar will take place in Timișoara, Romania, between the 5th and the 8th of May. And the fourth and final seminar will take place in Zagreb, Croatia, between the 23rd and the 26th of June. Then, for the webinars, as discussed, the upcoming one is on Copernicus EMS fires and floods on the 4th of June, and then the later one in September. The bilateral meetings take place throughout this duration, so in the upcoming months, the bilateral meetings will be taking place. And then we have the two simulation exercises, the SIMEX. One has already been successfully completed earlier in March, on the 24th and 25th, and the next one is on the 6th and the 7th of October. But for the exercises, I'm going to hand over to Simon, who will be able to tell you more about what you can expect and how you can participate to them.
Yes, thank you, Anita. So speaking about the simulation exercises, the main goal is that you are able to go deeper into the usage of the EU space services in crisis management. So I will explain how does it work, Anita. Thank you, perfect. So we think that one of the best way to retain and have knowledge about the EU space services that you practice with these EU space services into some real fake conditions into simulation exercises. So here you will use all the different EU space assets and services you will learn during the seminars, and you will have to collaborate and take decisions with provided roles in real time, real fake time, of course, to face a crisis. So how to participate? We had already one session last week, which was successfully. And the next one is on 6 and 7 of October 2026 in Brussels, in the DG DEFIS European Commission headquarters. But there is a prerequisite, is that you participate into at least one training seminar, one in Romania or in Croatia, because you will learn a lot of knowledge about the EU space services that are required to participate into the exercises, into the different scenarios we have made for the exercises. And it is organized around 1.5 days on Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday morning and beginning of afternoon. The goal is that you are able to spend only one night in Brussels to come for the exercise. So to come beginning of morning of Tuesday and leaving the afternoon evening of Wednesday. And you will have the main challenge, which is a 5 hours simulation exercise. And also you will have a 2 hours simulation exercise as a warm-up for the preparation of the main challenge during 5 hours. You can go to the next slide. Perfect, thank you. So your mission, you will be involved in the crisis management cell as the fictional EU member state of Goodlandia. It's a fake EU member state we created for the sake of the scenarios. And here you have on the bottom of the slide an example of what type of scenario we are doing. Anita, you can maybe type on like 4 times. Yeah, perfect, thank you. So you will have again a starting situation with some situation about your country of Goodlandia. For example, droughts, heat waves, high temperatures, or extreme fire risks, provided through EU space services. Then you will have an event happening, like a wildfire ignition, and then some escalation and objectives. You will have some, maybe dry vegetation or hot winds that will escalate the risk of fire and the size of the fire, and then some objectives to evacuate like a village or to protect critical infrastructure. And here you have some pictures of the last week of the first edition of the exercise. These are some pictures of the crisis cell doing their work to manage the actual crisis. Voilà, of the exercise last week. So feel free to come in the training and then in the seminar, and then in the exercises to participate in such events. Thank you, Anita. I think I give the floor to Anita or Charlie now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Simon, for detailing the CMEX. So now we are going a bit outside of the pure core training activities. Another objective of the Sunshine Project, on top of training you on these services, is to assist the uptake of Galileo EWSS, and so to provide a support to the countries that are willing to integrate Galileo EWSS into their national warning systems to achieve it. So basically, we will be supporting 10 countries. So 7 out of the 10 are already confirmed today. So there is still 3 countries to be be chosen. So if you are interested, please contact us. So what we will do during this session is to accompany you in different ways. The first thing is to explain how the system works, how you will be able to use it, and drawing together a roadmap, with the steps that are necessary to take in order to be able to use the service. So basically, what we'll be relaying on you during this adoption support is to identify the relevant national actors that are involved in population alerting. We'll see a bit more on that in the next slide. To facilitate the coordination with them, and very importantly, to provide feedback on the service, what you think will work perfectly, what you think could be enhanced or not exactly aligned with the way you use alerting in your country at the moment. So we can provide the feedback to the European Commission on your feedbacks to the European Commission. What we will do is to organize and coordinate all of that, integrate your feedback as discussed, and provide guidelines and recommendations for EWSS adoption. So at the end of the day, at the end of the technical assistance, which include on-site visits, you will have all of the steps that you need to perform to go towards Galileo EWSS, adapted to your specific case in your country and the current situation and what you are willing to do. Just a word on the stakeholders that are, I would not say mandatory, but very useful to have a roundtable for this exercise. So first of all, the regulatory and political stakeholders to ensure that the legal compliance of EWSS is taken into account, and that you have political support in your country to adapting your current alerting systems to adapt to EWSS. Of course, alerting authorities that will be using the service, and the owners of the public warning systems, so at public level or the providers that are contracted in your country, if they have to adapt the existing warning system to incorporate EWSS features. So of course, if you are willing to participate to that, we will go into more details and give you more detail on what we will do, we'll be doing during this support period. And I think there is a last one, a last part to show you the email address on which you can contact us to organize that. So it's the Sunshine email address. You will find this email address a bit everywhere in our communications and in the UCPKN page that Anita mentioned earlier.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for the presentation of the technical assistance. So I'm taking over again just to explain to you what happens after the training. So after the seminars have concluded and the webinars and the simulation exercises, what is to come? First of all, if you want to revisit a presentation, a module, or touch up on the knowledge that you've gained during the Sunshine trainings, you'll be happy to know that all of the material will be made available on the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network to download for free. So the UCPKN will be your one-stop shop for anything related to civil protection training. You'll have access to the materials presented during the Sunshine seminars, the theoretical presentations for each EU space component, but also the content presented during the practical exercises. You'll be able to access them at any time and reuse them for your own training or to share with your teams. If you want to follow the Sunshine page on the UCPKN platform, you can do so by scanning the QR code that you can see right now on your screens. And then you'll also be able to stay updated for all of our upcoming training activities. You'll find a dedicated section of the page that includes all of the upcoming events, as well as how to register and participate in them. So. Yep, there we go. Another thing that happens after the trainings is that you go from Sunshine training participants to Sunshine ambassadors. I'll explain to you what an ambassador does in just a moment. After successfully completing the seminars, all participants will receive a certificate of completion, which acts as proof of your knowledge on the EU space services. And you also become the main point of contact for organizing the bilateral meetings for your country. We rely on your support to help us get directed to all the relevant contacts that should be included in the bilateral meeting in your country. And you can also help us by providing insights into national needs in preparation of the meeting, so in the preparatory stages. And as Sunshine ambassadors, you are lastly responsible for being the reference point for your colleagues for any information related to EU space services. You are able now, as ambassadors, to promote the Sunshine trainings within your organization. But by having access to the materials, you also become the reference point for questions related to EU space services and their applications to your day-to-day operations. So what do you have to look forward to in the coming months? As was mentioned earlier, there's 2 upcoming seminars. The first one, the one that's closer in the calendar, is the one in Timișoara, Romania, between the 5th and 8th of May 2026. And then the last Sunshine seminar takes place in Zagreb, Croatia, between the 23rd and 26th of June 2026. If you're interested to participate, we invite you to scan the QR code that you see right here to fill the expression of interest form. The expression of interest form will help us gather some insights into your profile, specifically your existing level of knowledge on the EU space components. And from then on, you will be contacted by the Sunshine team to learn about the progress of your application to the Sunshine seminars. Then the next upcoming webinar is the Sunshine training webinar on using EU space services to tackle wildfires and floods. As we mentioned, it will cover the DEFIS and EFIS systems on the 4th of June 2026. You had the QR code on how to register for that earlier on, but you'll also be able to access it again when you get the slides, but also on the UCPKN Sunshine page. So at this stage, we have reached the end of the presentations and we are ready to start with the Q&A session. If you would like to ask a question to the Sunshine team, I highly encourage you to use the raise hand function, or you can also write your question directly in the chat if you prefer to do it this way. So we are at your disposal for any questions you might have.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions that have already been answered in the chat. So first question from David was about the training webinars and whether SSA will be part of the training. So it potentially will be one of the subjects for the third seminar on the 10th of September, but this is yet to be confirmed. Question from Aline about the countries that are taking place in the EWSS support. So I will not go into details in the public chat, but I answer to Aline in private. Okay, regarding the question from Danielle, so for the seminar in Timișoara, you should fill the registration form if not done already, and then yes, you will receive a confirmation by email. There are limited spots. We limit the participation to 40 participants to each seminar, but there is some seats left for the next 2 seminars in Timișoara and Zagreb. So feel free to register, but there is still seats, no problem. And then taking into account the Chernobyl case study, are modern European satellites equipped with certain sensors to detect radiation or certain chemical particles in area affected by fallout? I'm not sure of this particular question. I'm not expert on the Earth observation parts. But this is typically a question that we can address during the different conversation, and we can get someone more expert on this subject to answer to you. Do we have any other question? I see a question directly in the chat from Piotr. Is there anyone from Poland? So I'm not sure if you mean someone else in the audience, but we have welcomed already two participants from Poland to the seminar 1 and 2, actually, one in Tallinn and one in Strasbourg.
If you have any other questions, oh yeah, Piotr, please give me a moment. Go ahead.
I think you are muted, Piotr, but you can unmute if you want to speak directly.
Okay, no?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can
this
hear
is
you.
Okay. So the question is where you can find information about the dates of meetings. Is there any website of the Sunshine Project? Could you provide it for us?
You mean to organize the bilateral meetings?
Yes, exactly. All of this of the dates which are connected with seminars. I would like to browse the dates of the seminars.
Okay, so maybe Anita, you can show the screen with all of the dates again.
Yes, give me just a moment. I'll have to go a bit back. There we
Oh, that's
are.
great. Thank you. I missed.
No
Okay,
worries.
thank you very
You
much.
can take a screenshot if you like, but the slides will be made available on the website, so you
Oh,
can download them.
that is great. Okay, thank you.
And you can also find all of that information already in the Sunshine page on the UCPKN website.
Okay, that's great. Could you send on the chat the address of the website? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. You beat me to it. Okay.
Any other question? Okay, so I hope that you got the. I can also copy paste actually the link to the registration form. So let me paste it here, so it will be useful. So we encourage you to come and register for the seminars. As I said, there are some spots left for Timisoara in May and Zagreb in June. So you are very welcome. And if you have any question, please feel free to contact us as well. And we will be happy to answer and guide you through the right contacts.
Exactly. And if you want to watch the webinar again, the recording will be made available on the Sunshine page on the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network platform, where, as we mentioned earlier, you'll be able to find both the recording and the slides presented today so that you can access them again. Now, if you have any questions about the Sunshine project, the trainings, the exercises, or other activities, or if you would like to learn more information, you can find here our contacts. If for anything related to the Sunshine project, the Sunshine trainings, you can contact me at the addresses that you see right now on your screen. Then for the Sunshine exercises, you can contact Simon again at the addresses that you see right now. And then all general questions about Sunshine and its activity and the project activities, you can direct them to sunshine@telespazio.com. Okay. I think if I was just checking to see if there were some questions in the chat, but I don't think there are questions. Unless there are any other questions, I think we have reached the end of the webinar.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Yes, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for your time, and we sincerely hope to see you in one of the upcoming Sunshine training activities. Have a very nice rest of your day.
Thank
And
you. Goodbye.
see you soon, hopefully.